right? Summary. We're trying to make things simple. We're trying to keep it simple, especially if you're taking just the RBT exam. This is really the essence of what you need to know. Generalization is the occurrence of behavior under different untrained conditions. Maintenance is the extent to which a learner continues to perform a target behavior after part of the intervention has been terminated. That's really all there is to it. Generalization, you teach it in one setting, the behavior occurs in a different setting. Boom, we've generalized. You teach a skill to a client, that client goes to another technician, does the skill, boom, we've generalized. Maintenance, we teach a skill for 6 months, we stop teaching, 6 months later, that client is still able to do the skill, boom, it's maintained. Simple as that. Now, one disclaimer, generalization and maintenance are not always the same. So can generalization and maintenance happen at the same time? Absolutely. However, if the behavior never occurs in the untrained condition, it hasn't generalized. If the behavior occurs, but then stops occurring, it hasn't maintained. Important distinction, but generalization and maintenance absolutely occur simultaneously, but not everything is generalization and not everything is maintenance. Okay, easy summary. That's what we need to know. Let's continue. So generalization across settings, probably the most common type of generalization we talk about, settings and situations, okay? The extent to which a learner emits a target behavior in a setting or situation that is different from the instructional setting. Sounds very similar to just the overall definition of generalization, because that's all it is, right? We're seeing if a target behavior can occur outside of the untrained environment with new stimuli. Basic as that. If I teach in the clinic, can it occur in the home? If I teach in the home, can it occur in the school? If I teach it, can the teacher see the behavior? On and on, right? Generalization, it's as simple as that, okay? So let's look at our question. Lorraine was taught to pull weeds from her mom's flower bed. Lorraine, without instruction, will now pull weeds from the neighbors' lawns and backyards. This is an example of blank. So let's break it down. Lorraine was taught to pull weeds from her mom's flower bed. Now, Lorraine, without prior instruction, goes and starts pulling weeds from the neighbors' lawns and backyards. What is happening with that response? Well, we're starting to generalize, right? No instruction given. She sees weeds, she pulls weeds. The behavior is occurring in a different setting or situation, different from the instructional setting. Instructional setting, mom's flower bed, now occurring neighbors' lawns and backyards. It's not maintenance, right? Because we're not maintaining with mom's flower bed. We're generalizing to these other areas. We're specifically generalizing across settings, okay? We're not sure about the time. It could be occurring at 3 p.m. every day. There's no indication of the time. And then, of course, it's not shaping because the response is already occurring. Shaping occurs as we build up to a response. Simply put, Lorraine is generalizing her ability to pull weeds across different settings. All right, response generalization gives people trouble. Let's make it easy. When you're looking at response generalization, think, okay? Think I have multiple responses occurring in the presence of a single stimulus. In other words, a learner emits an untrained response that is functionally equivalent to a trained behavior. So if you teach a behavior that serves a function, generalization occurs when that new untrained responses emerges that serves the same function. So if we have all these responses occurring in the presence of this stimuli, all these responses are different, but they're serving the same function. And that's the general idea, right? If we have a person who's giving us a high five as a greeting, next time we see that person, maybe we say hello. Maybe we say, how's it going? Maybe we fist bump them. Maybe we give them a head nod. All these behaviors, all these responses serve the same function, right? They're just generalizing. So again, a learner emits an untrained response that is functionally equivalent to the trained behavior. We teach this first response, new responses emerge that are functionally equivalent. Each morning, Stacy walks into her boss's office and tells him what he has scheduled for the day. Stacy was sick today, so she texted her boss his schedule. This is an example of blank. Let's break it down. Stacy was taught, right, to walk into her boss's office and tell him what he has scheduled for the day. That's her general, or that's her usual response, right? Her Boss is the stimulus. Today, she was sick. So instead of telling him the schedule, what does she do? She texts him the schedule. Multiple responses serving the same exact function, generalizing the response. It's not stimulus generalization. Stimulus generalization occurs when there's a singular response, occurs in the presence of multiple stimuli. We have multiple responses here. We're not maintaining, right? Because it's a different response, texting instead of walking in. We are generalizing our responses, okay, across this stimuli. We are emitting an untrained response functionally equivalent to that first response, walking into the boss's office and telling him his schedule. And of course, it's not tacting. Tacting is just labeling. Stimulus generalization, okay? So it's kind of like response generalization. Think of it in terms of I have multiple stimuli. A single response is occurring in the presence of all these stimuli. So when an antecedent stimulus has a history of evoking a response that receives reinforcement, similar stimuli tend to evoke the same response. In other words, when more than one stimuli evokes the same response. It's as simple as that. You have 100 stimuli, they all evoke the same response. Stimulus generalization, okay? Very easy. Let's think about a child who maybe has overgeneralized, right? He's learned what colors are, but every time he sees a blue, red, or green crayon, right, he says red. Overgeneralization, but it's still stimulant generalization, right? Because the blue, red, and green crayon all evoke the same response. If we look at our question, at one point, Chucky was reinforced for saying cat in the presence of a cat. Now, Chucky says cat in the presence of anything with 4 legs and a tail. This is what? Well, what's occurring? We've got how many responses? A singular response. That's going to tell us we're not looking at response generalization. And we have that singular response occurring in the presence of more than one stimuli. Cat occurs in the presence of anything with 4 legs and a tail. This is stimulus generalization. Very straightforward, right? Don't make it more complicated. Response generalization, we have multiple responses, okay? In the presence of one stimuli, all the responses serve the same function. Stimulus generalization, we have a singular response occurring across many different stimuli. Okay, maintenance, response maintenance. Maintenance is the other side of the coin for generalization, just like we talked about in the beginning. It's the extent to which your learner performs a target behavior after part or the entire intervention has stopped. So think about 2 plus 2. Can you still add 2 plus 2? Sure. When's the last time somebody taught you 2 plus 2? Could be years ago, right? That behavior has done what? It's maintained, right? It's a learned behavior. Instruction stops, learned behavior continues. Simply put, behavior continues once teaching stops. Don't overcomplicate it. Again, can maintenance and generalization occur together? Absolutely. Think about 2 plus 2. That behavior is maintained. You're also able to do what? You're also able to add 2 plus 2 in a variety of settings across different people. So let's look at our question. During RBT training, you learn how to verbally prompt clients. 2 months later, you continue to verbally prompt clients without further instruction. All right. So same response, right? You're continuing to verbally prompt these clients just like you were taught. However, instruction has stopped and you still do it. And that's really the key, right? If they specify you're still doing something, quote unquote, without further instruction or after instruction stops, start thinking maintenance. Okay. That's really the key. And that's what we're kind of looking for. Generalization, across settings, or we're not really sure if it's across settings, right? You could be doing it in the same clinic with the same clients. Same with time, it doesn't specify. So we need to be careful with the word choices on generalization and maintenance questions. If they're specifying you're doing this without further instruction, they're pushing you towards what? They're pushing you towards maintenance. And then shaping, of course, again, is not what we're looking for. Shaping is teaching a behavior. We're not teaching it. It's already trained. We are maintaining our ability to verbally prompt clients. Okay, several different ways to plan for generalization. If you're an RBT, don't worry about these too much. As BCBAs, though, you do need to know these. My advice, since they're all pretty similar, okay, I would allocate some study time just to this. Try to memorize it and try to make it rote. All right. It's the easiest way to do it. Okay. Just my opinion. So let's go through them. Train loosely. When we train loosely, we're varying non-critical aspects of the environment. So let's say I work in a treatment room and each day I put up a new poster, or I change out the type of chair we're using. I change the color of the rug. These are non-critical aspects of the environment, right? They don't really make any difference, but we're training loosely. We don't want to get into the same type of routine every day where we're in the same room looking at the same things over and over again. We should always be varying non-critical aspects of the environment. What about indiscriminable contingencies? So the learner does not know when reinforcement will arrive. This is using natural contingencies. This is fading reinforcement and thinning reinforcement. This is why we should use things like variable ratio schedules. If the client never knows when the reinforcement is going to arrive, well, that's much more like the generalized setting than a contrived setting. So we don't want them to know necessarily when reinforcement is going to arrive. Now, be careful. This is planning for generalization. So if we're working on generalizing things, typically the client's already going to know the skill. Okay, so keep that in mind. Multiple exemplars. Practice several different stimuli and response variations. So what are we training here? Think response generalization, stimulus generalization. If we're practicing several different stimuli, well, we want several different stimuli to evoke a response. If I'm teaching the color blue, I want a blue card, I want a blue bunny, and I want a blue crayon, so all evoke blue. If we're teaching response variations, maybe I want different ways, again, to greet somebody, right? So we're teaching response variations. The generalized setting, the natural setting, is messy, right? We can't just plan for one situation, one response all the time, okay? It's not going to cut it. Then program common stimuli. Make the teaching setting similar to the generalized setting, okay? So this is similar to train loosely, right? But with program common stimuli, now we're changing things that are more critical to learning, okay? Natural contingencies, use contingencies that occur naturally. That one's self-explanatory. This is natural teaching. And then general case, identify and use teaching examples that represent the full generalized setting. So if you want your client to get a job at the library, you should go into the library and try to identify and duplicate as many aspects of that environment as possible. The closer our training environment is to the real thing, the better. All steps, all ways to plan for generalization, okay? Know them at least loosely. RBTs, you don't have to worry about them so much. BCBAs, you do. Summary, generalization, the occurrence of behavior under different untrained conditions. Simple as that, right? Teach in one place, behavior happens elsewhere. Maintenance, the extent to which a learner continues to perform a target behavior after part of the intervention has been terminated. In other words, I teach you something, I stop teaching you something, you continue to do whatever I teach you. Very straightforward. Don't overcomplicate it. All right, thanks for watching. Check out bcbastudy.com or rbtexamreview.com, depending on what test you're taking. Any questions, I would love to help you. Reach out anytime. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.